I call to order this regular meeting of the Show Low Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. Roll call shows that all commissioners, except for Vice Chair Lewis, are present this evening. Next, we will have the invocation given by Commissioner Roberts, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Schneff. If you'd like to join us, please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we are truly grateful to be able to be here this evening, and we ask Thee to bless us that we can perform the functions that are necessary to run our city to the benefit of all. We ask Thee to bless everybody, that we can be cordial and not contentious, and we ask Thee to bless us that we can make good decisions and good choices in a manner that is consistent with our laws and with our plans and our citizens' desires. We ask Thee to bless this meeting, that it will go smoothly and efficiently. We ask Thee to bless those who are not here, that they could try to be here in the future. We ask Thee to bless us as we go home tonight, that we will do so in safety. We ask for all these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ.
To the flag of the United States, to the republic, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
The next item on the agenda is new business, and the first item under new business is item A, consideration of conditional use permit 602-04-260, submitted by Roy De La Torre of Alberto's Mexican Food to add a drive-through at their existing location of 1457 East Deuce of Clubs, Show Low, Arizona, that being APN 210-14-032A. I will turn it over to Ms. Fechtelkotter for the staff summary.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Roy De La Torre of Alberto's Mexican Foods has submitted a conditional use permit, or CUP, to add a drive-through at their existing location of 1457 East Deuce Clubs, that being APN 210-14032A. The subject property is Zone C2, which is general commercial, and drive-through restaurants require a CUP in the C2 zone. The applicant has operated Alberto's Mexican Foods at this location since January of 2004. The applicant plans to relocate the existing parking spaces in front of the building to accommodate the new drive-through. In addition, the applicant also has committed to upgrading the landscaping in front of the new drive-through area. A site plan of the proposed drive-through has been attached for your review. Current zoning of the surrounding properties includes to the north, south, east, and west C2, which is general commercial. The current land uses of the surrounding properties include to the north, Owens Propane and Horn Auto Body, to the south, residential, and to the east, residential, and to the west, Show Low Creek. Transmittal memos were sent to all affected agencies and no applicable comments have been received. No public comment has been received regarding the proposed development. After reviewing the zoning ordinance standards for review, finding of fact, discussions with the applicant, and because the request is consistent with the City of Show Low general plan, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve CUP 602-04260 submitted by Roy De La Torre of Alberto's Mexican Food to add a drive-through at their existing location of 1457 East Deuce Clubs, that being APN 210-14032A, subject to the following conditions. 1. All development shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements, including permit, sign, landscaping, fire code, and Arizona Department of Transportation, or ADOT, requirements. 2. The surfacing of all accessways, interior driveways, and parking areas shall be surfaced in accordance with city code and shall meet the minimum loading requirements outlined by Timber Mesa Fire and Medical District. 3. The right-of-way adjacent to the subject property shall be landscaped, including sod, and shall be maintained. And 4. Parking and lighting shall meet all requirements of City Code, Chapter 19.105. Staff, as well as the applicant, are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fechtelkotter. Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff? Commissioner Roberts.
I have one. Have we taken into consideration the fact that with the relocated parking, the walk-in customers are going to be crossing the drive-through lane to access into the restaurant?
Yeah, we have asked the applicant to address what they're going to do to make that safe.
Just a safety issue.
Right, yes. Yeah, we did discuss that. We had a pre-application, and that was an item that we brought up in the meeting.
That's my only concern.
Any other questions for staff?
I do.
Mr. Wilson?
Is there any concern that it's going to cause any bottlenecks in traffic? Going up the Deuce and into?
We don't, with the way that it's actually kind of coming from the opposite direction, so they're not gonna be, piling up onto the Deuce. It'll be in the interior of the parking lot.
But to access it, they're going to drive in towards the hotel and then make a U-turn and come back the other direction? So is that potential parking issue or a potential traffic issue doing that? In addition to the pedestrian issue, is also a potential traffic issue. So I think that's what Ms. Wilson's trying to point out, right?
Yeah, traffic on the Deuce crossing over, just any potential. I love Alberto. I'm just.
Yeah, we had a meeting about it, and we said that, you need to make sure that this isn't gonna cause issues for the hotel use, because there are several uses at this location. So if there's, issues, we may have to revisit it. We have discussed it. We've also discussed it with the fire district, and the fire district did not express any concerns.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant? Mr. Roberts, did you want to ask your question?
Well, the question that I asked staff, then I would go ahead and ask the applicant.
So the applicant would
Leila Torres, do you want to come up?
come forward, just state your name and address for the minutes, please.
And just for notice of conflict of interest, I do patronize your restaurant quite a bit.
Many of you, yeah. My name is Roy De La Torre, address 1457 East Deuce Clubs, here on the Deuce Clubs.
Mr. Roberts.
So, you heard the questions that I asked the staff.
Correct.
The two issues that I can see, potential issues, are safety and traffic concerns. So, do you think that those are issues that, how do you anticipate dealing with the pedestrians crossing the drive-through lane?
Fair. So, if you guys can refer to, I don't know if it's flashing up here, but I'm sure you guys all have it. So right in front of the little order menu, we didn't include it in this one because this is just general floor plan, but we wanted to add like hazard lines because a car will have to yield when they're ordering, so they'll obviously see.
So you'll have some substantial signage and street striping
Correct.
to indicate to people that they need to watch for pedestrians crossing in there?
Safe zone, yes.
And hopefully that won't be an issue, right? Okay. And then as far as the traffic coming in, they're going to come in off into that entrance like they always do right now, but then they're going to have to cut over towards the hotel and make a U-turn coming back. Has the hotel or any of those little businesses in that other little building right there expressed any concern that it's going to affect them?
No, the landowner, Sue Nigo, gave me full authority, and they're all on board with this floor plan. If you guys have visited physically, that parking lot is pretty big to accommodate all those cars that will, if they pile up, and that will allow ample space for the dragon tail, per se. Yeah. And on the street, so when you enter, it's a 3-lane. So obviously the two that are going forward towards the Deuce, and there's a little cutoff one, so they'll be able to see
Yeah.
who are leaving.
It's almost like you have a right turn lane there going into your, as it's wider and then it gets narrower, but there is enough extra room on the Deuce Clubs there to make a right turn without impeding traffic. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, you can turn off, right. Other questions?
My questions. Anybody else
Any other
want to?
questions for the applicant? Thank you very much, Roy. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment on this particular agenda item? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the commission for any discussion and a motion. Commissioner Roberts.
I move to approve conditional use permit 602-04261 submitted, wrong one. Let me back up here. Get the right one. I move to approve conditional use permit 602-04260 submitted by Roy De La Torre of Alberto's Mexican Foods to add a drive-through at their existing location of 1457 East Dusa Clubs, that being APN 210140332A, subject to staff recommendations.
I have a motion by Commissioner Roberts. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Wilson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously.
Just a reminder to the public that this conditional use permit will become effective in 7 days unless we receive a appeal submitted by the city clerk's office.
Thank you, Ms. Facto-Cotter. We'll move on to item B under new business, consideration of conditional use permit 602-04-261, submitted by Jason Spear to allow for a recreational vehicle resort on property located at 100 East Owens / 201 South Central Avenue, Show Low, Arizona, that being APN 210-13-001F. I'll turn it over to Ms. Facto-Cotter for the staff summary.
Thank you again, Chair and Commissioners. Jason Spear has submitted a conditional use permit, or CUP, to allow for recreational vehicle or RV resort on property located at 100 East Owens and /201 South Central Avenue, that being APN 21013-001F. The subject property is 20.55 acres and is zone C2, which is general commercial. RV parks require CUP in the C2 zone and shall be developed according to section 19.25.210 of City Code. Among City Code requirements, each unit within an RV park shall have a minimum lot area of 1,400 square feet, in addition to a minimum of 500 square feet of recreation area per unit, or 200 square feet if the recreation area is centralized. According to City Code, usable open space is defined as space that can be enjoyed by people. This could include landscape gardens, plazas, grass, trees, fountains, sitting areas, etc., which is meant to provide an open garden atmosphere. The applicant has proposed a 152 space RV resort on the subject property. Each space will be 40 feet by 50 feet with 24-foot wide two-way access roads throughout the resort and a 6-foot solid fence along the south and east property lines. The park will include a host area, office, dog areas, playground, commercial area, pond, and walking trail. The main access to the resort will be off Central Avenue with a secondary access off East Owens. There will be two emergency-only accesses onto East McNeil. The resort will be developed in 3 phases over 2 years. The first phase will include the host area, office, and development of 75 lots. The second phase will consist of the development of the 71. The third phase will include the developments of lots 147 through 152, the commercial area, and walking trail. The applicant has committed to preserve as much of the surrounding trees and vegetation as possible, and the applicant has submitted a conceptual plan which has been attached for your review. Current zoning of the surrounding properties includes to the north C2 general commercial, to the south R1-7, which is single family residential 7,000 square feet, to the east C1, which is neighborhood commercial, to the west C2, which is general commercial, and R1-7 single family residential 7,000 square feet. The current land uses of the surrounding properties include to the north Show Low Plaza Shopping Center, to the south Timber Ridge Subdivision, to the east White Mountain Villa Apartments, and to the west Vacant Commercial and the Westwood Subdivision. Transmittal memos were sent to all affected agencies and no applicable comments were received. The property was posted and letters were sent in accordance with City Code. Staff received a phone call from a neighbor who voiced concerns regarding traffic and speed along Central Avenue. Staff also received 2 additional phone calls after the preparation of this staff summary report with similar concerns regarding this development. After reviewing the zoning ordinance, standards for review, findings of facts, discussion with the applicant, and because the request is consistent with the City of Show Low general plan, staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve conditional use permit 602-04-261 submitted by Jason Spear to allow for a recreational vehicle resort on property located at 100 East Owen/201 South Central Avenue, that being 210-13001F, subject to the following conditions. 1, all development should comply with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements, including permit, sign, landscaping, fire code, and Arizona Department of Transportation requirements. 2, all interior driveways shall have a minimum width of 24 feet. All driveways and interior parking areas shall be surfaced in accordance with city code and shall meet the minimum loading requirements outlined by Timber Mesa Fire and Medical District. Plans for construction, including grading and drainage, shall be done by a registered civil engineer and submitted to the city for review and approval prior to the commencement of any site work. The detention pond shall be developed with the first phase of the project for the entire development. 4, there shall be additional landscape screening installed along the east side of the subject property. Number 5, lots 147 through 152 shall be screened with a solid material fence from all rights of way. 6, the right-of-way and adjacent to the subject property shall be landscaped according to city code and shall be maintained. And 7, parking and lighting shall meet all requirements of city code chapter 19.105. All lighting shall be fully shielded from adjacent properties and right-of-ways. Staff, including the city engineer and the applicant, are available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fecto-Cotter. Are there any questions for staff from the commission? Commissioner Wilson.
So same concern I have with traffic. It looks like that there are 2 ways out of this subdivision, or possibly 3. I'm seeing Central, I'm seeing McNeil. So only 2.
This is just emergency.
Okay. So is there any concern about traffic pulling onto Central, and impeding other traffic?
Not that I am aware of. They are going to have to submit a traffic study that will be reviewed and approved by the city engineer prior to this being approved, and that will be taken into account at that time.
So this is just straight RV, right?
Correct.
100% travel trailer, pull it in, park it, dump stations, water.
I would refer that question to the applicant as far as the type of product that they are presenting.
To follow up on Commissioner Wilson's question on access onto Central, I guess this is probably a better question for the applicant. So I do have another question regarding the setbacks. You'll have to remind me what setbacks are in the C2 zone, and is that what this particular development would be subject to as far as setback requirements? Because there wasn't anything additional in the staff recommendation.
Right. So the C2 setbacks, it is 10 feet from street property lines. It is 6 feet from the rear unless it's adjacent to a residential zone, which it goes up to 20 feet. And then there's 0 side setbacks.
So very little.
Yeah, they're minimal.
Okay. And are there any other questions for staff?
We have one more.
Yes, Commissioner Wilson.
How many letters did you say were sent out?
68.
68. And of those 68, you got very few responses?
We received 3 phone calls.
All right.
Any other questions for staff? I do have a couple more. For condition number 6, the right-of-way adjacent to the subject property shall be landscaped. How are you anticipating that works with the proposed phasing of the project?
So we have spoken with the applicant and indicated that as the different phases develop, they'll need to develop that proportional area of the landscaping. So they do the Owens first. They'll need to do that portion on Owens, and then along as they get closer to Central, then they'll have to do the landscaping along Central.
One more question for staff.
I'll get to you in just a second, Commissioner Roberts. Just to clarify what you mean by proportional. So if they build, phase one was 75 lots out of the 152, and so would they have to include approximately 50% of the required landscaping for the entire project with that first phase?
That's how we,
And would, my understanding based on their site plan is, and city code would be that sidewalk, curb gutter sidewalk would be required along Central Avenue. And that would be required also proportional to the number of lots developed. So with phase one, approximately 50% of the curb gutter and sidewalk would be required before phase one's building permit would be approved.
that is correct.
Commissioner Roberts.
So we're looking at 2 ingress and egress locations, one on Central and one on Owens. Those are going to be the primary ingress and egress. But in addition to that, I see notated 2 emergency exits that will exit out onto McNeil. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So in the case of having to evacuate or emergency, fire department or whatever, there would be 2 additional available, smaller and not used regularly, but available in the case of emergency, 2 more exits.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Knapp.
You said front is 10-foot setback, rear is 20 in the side. Do you know what they're considering front, side, and,
Yeah, this one is a little bit,
since there's residential?
tricky. So basically, it's a corner lot. It's actually going to have three street side property lines. So then that would remain a rear remaining. So along that east
the
side,
east side
yes,
is
would
gonna
be
be
the
the
rear. Yes, that's correct. And my I was trying to show I do have a map, but my mouse seems to have died. So I don't know if anybody else's mouse is working, and we can try to advance the slides.
I need to- Yeah, I'm not sure that this is going to work.
There we go.
Not moving beyond the
Something's happening.
Albertos.
Maybe.
Turn it off and turn it back on, and you get a little bit of life.
All I've got in front of me is the Albertos, so we haven't moved to, the screen in front of me doesn't show this project.
Hold on. You gotta move quickly. There you go. There you go.
Someone's got one.
There we go.
Get it?
Oh.
There you go.
Okay, where are we going?
How's it?
Cool. Sorry about the technical difficulties here.
Oh, that's as far.
There we go.
Is that which one we need?
There, so that's the aerial, and I think one more. There should be the subject property. There we go.
Commissioner Schneff, was your question answered? Sorry.
So my question is, on their site plan, it says 10-foot setback, but that's a rear, so are they just asking for a variance because it's a 20-foot requirement?
I believe so. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that property not residential though? Isn't that also C2? The property to,
The east.
Apartments, I know.
Yeah, that's also C2. Yeah.
so the city standard,
Is it 10 feet then?
city code
Yeah.
for that would be
Actually, the 6 feet.
the 6.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion. Yeah, that is also zoned the C2 with it's actually the apartments that are there. But the minimum for the rear is 6 feet. However, for RV parks, the minimum setback from other property lines is increases to 10 feet. So that's why there's that 10 feet instead of the 6 feet. I apologize for the confusion.
I'm just trying to.
Yep, no,
make sure I
you're fine.
understand.
And to follow up with another couple questions from me, what would they be subject to the 20-foot setback along Owens? Because Owens is part of a residential platted subdivision that's zoned R one 17.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes. It's kind of hard to tell on here because it's really small, but they've shown a 10-foot. They have a fence, and then there's an additional 10-foot on the inside of the drive along East Owens there.
So for 10 plus 10 for a total of 20.
Correct.
Is that in addition to the 24-foot road that runs along that side?
Yes, that is. Yep.
And then, just from kind of a conceptual level, how tied is the applicant to this particular site plan? I know there substantial conformance, but I just would want to make sure that, I mean, this is a lot of units for a single entrance off of Owens, and I think that, especially because Owens, the road that the city's building there, which I understand is separate from this project, but it does have a pretty steep slope. And so I do have some concerns about all of the loading going onto Owens. And so I do think it's important to also have the access onto Central to break up the traffic loading between two locations. But I also know that driveway entrance is a little bit more complex to construct due to the wash that runs through there. And possibly the city engineer might have some comments on this. They show it in phase 3, and is that consistent with what staff's thinking that secondary entrance would be constructed with phase 3, or is there like a certain unit threshold that would stipulate that secondary entrance onto Central being constructed? Because I know that one could be fairly complicated to construct.
Sure. Yeah, in the discussions with the applicant, they have indicated that the first two phases would enter off of East Owens. You could confirm that with the applicant. I know that they've had several different iterations of the site plan, kind of throwing around different options. And yeah, there's certain, as far as the access onto McNeil, the city engineer may be able to clarify that.
Welcome up, Shane.
Meetings patiently? I'm sorry, your question was regarding the entrance off Central?
Yeah, I just, from a traffic loading perspective, having whatever the first two phases, 140 some units, all loading onto Owens, provided that the emergency exits are for emergencies only and are not planning to be used for kind of primary entrances or exits as indicated on the site plan. I just was curious if you had any concerns about all of that traffic being loaded onto Owens for the first two phases being combined, or and being able to delay that secondary entrance onto Central to the third phase. I just was interested in your thoughts on that.
It's a very large zone commercial piece of property. Something similar to like a shopping center or something more dense could definitely be put in this place. This amount of units with the daily traffic. But the first two phases, the city's okay with the entrance off Owens, and then the third being constructed, or the second being constructed with phase 3.
Any other questions for the city engineer? Well, we've got him up here. Commissioner Roberts.
Yes. There is a brand new access road built to a subdivision, and that access road has just recently been built just south of Owens. Is that correct? That new access road that goes up the hill into the
Hill that's going to get paved here in a couple weeks, the one we're working on right now?
Yeah.
Yes. That's the East Owens extension. That's a separate city CIP project to enhance connectivity in the city. That is built as a minor collector. It's anticipated to take traffic of this loading of this type out to the minor arterial, which is Central. Central is one of our arterials, similar to Old Linden Road, Wilford, Whipple, things like that.
So when we're talking about East Owens and the extension there, when they actually exit this subdivision, they'll be going onto that newly built extension that we're working on right now.
Correct.
Okay. And
And just so you know, too, as a separate project that was awarded last week, the city's also reconstructing Owens going east the other direction. So we did a lot of utility work down that way. There's some water and some sewer work. It's in pretty rough shape. Owens will be reconstructed from the top of the hill where this new road ends, all the way down to 11th.
To 11th?
11th.
So as an alternative route for people exiting the RV, if they chose to, they could take Owens East and go to 11th.
Yes, they can go 5th. Mills goes by the school. 11th or 8th will take you back towards Whipple. And you go all the way down to 11th, and 11th will take you downtown here. And actually, you can keep going on Owens, and it'll take you to the highway.
But
State Route 260.
The anticipated traffic flow would be more direct if they went out to Central.
I think likely ingress and egress of this site will likely most generally head towards Central.
Thank you, Sam.
You bet.
Any other questions for the city engineer? Well, we've got him up here. We don't want him to walk too much.
Any concern going the other way, coming east on Owens?
You know, and that's
RVs like that coming out of there?
and this is the discussion of what the roads are made for. Owens has always been a minor collector roadway. Similar, or you've seen us construct these connectivity projects. We built the missing piece behind Horn Auto, so now you can come off the highway, you can drive up over Horn Auto, go through Pine Haven and hit Central. Now after this connection project, we'll be able to go from Central all the way to State Route 260. Similar to what McNeil kind of does, similar to what Whipple does. These major east-west roadways are designed to handle through traffic and move people east.
That was my, is it
Yeah.
designed when they redo it?
It is. And unfortunately, I mean, it's been a dead-end road for a really long time, and everyone sees a dead-end road as being dead-end forever. However, all these connectivity projects pop up, you know, the residents on there were a little bummed to see that happen. It's kind of a process of growing and adding connectivity and better enhancing, you know, emergency access capabilities. Think about the bypass routes for the parade, things like that. When we have these extra routes available to us, we have enhanced safety, quicker access, things like that.
Any other questions for the city engineer? Thank you very much, Shane.
Stick around.
Any other questions for staff? Popped up from that. Any questions for the applicant? Start with Commissioner Wilson. I see a head nod. If the applicant would come forward, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Few of us. My name is Jason Spear. This is my wife, Tricia Spear, our partner, Mike Fish, and his wife, Bernadette Fish. Our address, business address is 5925 Wagon Wheel Lane in Lakeside. First, I want to thank, all you guys for showing up, because this is exciting, right, for us. And I hope you guys will find some interest in what we're doing. We look at, Tricia and I have been born and raised here. I mean, this is our place to live. And one of the things we do in our multiple businesses manage campgrounds here in Arizona, New Mexico, Idaho, Montana, and Colorado. And so we're looking at, as we're in our own hometown, looking at the amount of people coming into our space that don't have a place to go, right? And so they're dispersing onto our forests and causing some issues with that. So we ended up talking with Mike and seeing that opportunity, saying, you know, what can we do as part of this city project to bring this together and bring some people into the town, generate revenue, and so on. And so this is what we're coming up with. So as we talk about this stuff, I hope you guys sense my level of excitement to see where we're going in this town. You know, when we sat down, I actually brought this up with Mike when we first sat down. I ran into Gentry one time and he goes, "Hey, we're found out," right? And we're found out. Now what are we going to do with it? And I think this is a decent opportunity to deal with that. So thank you for letting us come down and answer any questions for you and be in front of you, and let's go from there. So Gentry, I know you had a question.
I got a couple.
We're doing, sorry, I thought.
We're going to start with Commissioner Wilson,
Yeah.
and then we'll.
I won't run this thing, I promise.
He kind of has an issue with that.
Did you fill this out, this application?
I can't see that far.
I can't see it either. I'm just wondering. I feel like I'm looking at old police reports. Okay, I knew it. Okay. All right, so this application talks about a place for city visitors, to stay and to recreate, and short term, it looks like. So, as you know, Show Low, Navajo County has a lack of affordable housing. We have homeless here. We lack transitional housing and stuff like that. What's to keep somebody who's living out of their car with a trailer on the back from planting roots in your RV park? And
That is a very good question. And I think we have a very good answer. So what we've just, and I'll let Tricia speak to this here in a second, but in managing these different parks, we found out that short-term stay limits are number one, a huge curb in that problem in itself. So we're presenting a 21-day stay limit so people don't grow roots here. We don't want people building porches and putting out pink flamingos and all that other stuff. The second big part is that is our price point for the park. We're attracting visitors that are just that, visitors. We don't want to house somebody for long term and then have that become an issue to the park or the community. And so our price point is part of that. And our constant attention to the area. We'll have on-site hosts that will interact with our guests daily throughout the day. And the neat thing about this park versus some of our other public parks is we have control over it, so we can ask folks to leave if necessary. Right? So there's multiple things there to prevent that from happening. And I think we can achieve that relatively easily. They hit that?
okay, and then I noticed the lot sizes are not like super big. Obviously, it's an RV park, and you're going to do what, 75, and then the next phase, and then eventually 152. So if you had just one person for each spot, that's 152. Most people come up with 2 or more, so now you're talking like 300 or a little more. So being that it's in such close quarters of each other, do you have plans for handling conflict or anything? You have.
Yes. Our businesses in managing over 180 parks have very strict policies on how to handle conflict and how to de-escalate and how to, or when to request assistance from law enforcement in the city and so on. When you look at these sites, they look small on the map because there's 152 of them. However, if you can picture 50 feet by 40 feet, a traffic lane is 12 feet. And so we're almost 4 traffic lanes wide for one site. That's substantial. We're over 500 square feet per site, over the required 1,400 square feet. We're at 2,000, so 600 square feet over. And we're going to design this thing where each site, if you guys are looking at the site plan, has multiple trees and vegetation and stuff like that, because it is in our design that we keep this looking like a park. We don't want it to look like a parking lot, right? Or we don't want it to look like a trailer park. So the design presented pushes all of those sites on top of the hill there, and then retains that space out front along Central to do just that, add walking paths and parks and things like that. That's not only accessible by our guests, but by other members of the community that can visit that space. I know I went overboard on your question, Don. That's what I do.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the app? Commissioner Whipple.
I have 2 actually. Is this looking like it's going to be a year-round thing, or is it just mostly for summertime, or what are you guys anticipating with that?
So our peak seasons are definitely summertime, and that's Memorial to Labor Day, and we all know that. But yes, we are going to push to keep that open longer on the shoulder seasons. And one of the things we talked with the city about in our pre-meeting was if through the winter time, we have empty space that's not filling up, we can then sell that space as a longer term storage, as like somebody would then leave their camp trailer there for a month.
Not
or
living.
Not living there, but, or yes, just to leave it there. So we continue to generate a little bit more income off of that.
And the other question was utilities. Is each site going to have its own, water, electricity, all of that?
Yes. So, yes, each site will have power, water, and sewer. And those are designed, you can kind of see where they are on the easements for each site. If you look at the site plan next to that legend down there.
Commissioner Roberts.
Perhaps maybe I should have asked some of these questions of our engineer, but with these additional 150 lots, I'm assuming they're all going to be connected in one way or another to our city sewer system. Is that going to put an undue larger impact? Granted, if it was a subdivision, we'd probably have 150 houses in there. And the typical sewage system load from a trailer is usually much smaller than it might be from an equivalent house. But do we see any potential ramifications from putting in another 150 units there and burdening the...
Coming.
I made you walk, Shane. So I know I wasn't supposed to do that, but
You did speak to the fact that these do have a much lower load than like a residential house or like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And I know the wastewater collection system in the area is an 8-inch sewer main and does have capacity for its development.
does the fact that this was formerly a sawmill and has some, maybe could have some soil issues there because of that? Is the ground compacted enough? Has it been long enough since it was a sawdust lot that we don't have any concerns there?
When they get through on their on-site improvements, they'll have to go through planning and zoning for all their action, their site work. It's a private site on the interior, so it'll meet all the planning and zoning building codes.
Okay. So we would address those issues if they came up. Okay.
We did only find one car on the lot.
Okay.
So
Well, that's good. Was it still left over from the sawmill?
from the 50s or 60s. So.
Other questions for the applicant?
It says a solid fence on the east and the south side. What about between that church and that single-family home on the north side? Is there going to be a solid fence there too?
We have not planned for a solid fence there, no.
I was just, because it is a single-family house and a church right there. I was just trying to see if that's.
We don't have one planned for there, but we can plan for one there.
Just a question. I was just trying to figure out, find.
To point that out too, if you're, it's hard to determine, but there's a black line that runs all the way around there in that easement or that setback. And that would be a walking path around the entire property also.
One last question.
Commissioner Roberts.
That little cutout area where the emergency lanes are on either side, that's currently being used as an extra storage area. Is that my understanding? Is that correct? There's a company that's been storing materials on there? Or is that?
Actually, no, we bought that.
Oh, you did?
So we.
On a separate thing.
We have a different plan for that property. So it's,
Okay.
it's currently vacant.
Okay. All righty.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Hatch?
How are you gonna deal with your impact? Like, young lady at the end, I can't remember her name at the moment.
Facebook friends.
You got a 40-foot fifth wheel coming in, got a crew cab dually coming in, he's got 3 razors, he's got 4 other people coming to camp out. He's got 1 space.
So those
Is the norm.
well, and those spaces to preserve what we're trying to do are going to be limited to occupancy also.
Yeah.
So you can try and curtail them at check-in or
Yes.
reservation.
So we deal with this a lot in the campgrounds that we manage right now. And we have a policy in place, 2 vehicle max, 8 person max. And there are policies in place to, before they actually come up, there is an actual policy in place for that. So we will not allow to be crowded in those areas because we will have a max of vehicles and people in those.
Another concern I have is your square on your boxes, right? Your sites. And I'm looking at a KOA development down south. And their plans not square. So I'm just thinking 30-footer coming in. He's not real adept at parking. So it's tight is what I'm saying. And so how are you gonna help mitigate that or stop binding people up or give them room, you know?
Well, yeah, our first 3 conceptual plans were all angled.
Yeah, I mean, you need to run them west and then pull them in.
And then we ran into the roadways. So the roadways are 24 feet each, which gives some decent maneuverability. But
Provided there's not a car there.
right. So as we move forward with an engineered plan, we're not opposed to changing some of that a little bit to better figure that in. But as of right now, we've got 24 foot between them and 50 feet deep. So
These spaces are 50 long. My wife and I are RVers. We have a we pull our vehicle behind. When you pull into these, we've got a 10-foot setback right to the road. So when it's parked, it's 10 feet. Now, we also have 24 feet of roads. So you add that together being long, 70 plus a 10-foot easement on the other. So I mean, there's plenty of move there.
Well, even with your fire pit and your tree and
40 feet.
just to run it in.
If you're trying to,
I'm not talking about the continual RVer. I'm talking about if you hop out on this road on Memorial Day or Labor Day, every clown from the city in the world is pulling an RV up here. And 50% of them, it's their first time out of the city. And you're going to roll them in here. That's my concern. And he's got 12 kayaks with him. He's got 4 razors with him. He's got 15 kids with him.
management of space. So
That's my concern.
thought you meant about
Well,
so-
yep, trailer pullers, not a problem. Okay, but the reason I bring this up is because the concepts that I've seen, again, I'm looking at same layouts south, right? None of them are square. They've all got them angles to help bring them in, set them, or drive-through units for sets, not squared out. You're done, with your neighbor. That's my concern. Is
I can tell you this much. If we liken this to the Apache Trout Campground up at Big Lake, it's more squared off with narrower roads, and we manage that area and don't run into that issue.
plenty of freedom of movement.
Plenty of freedom to move around. And we still run into people trying to come in overloaded with people, trucks, trailers, all that stuff. We will have an overflow parking lot down at the commercial area and a disconnect and hookup spot for additional trailers and vehicles down there too. And so the goal is when they come into that space, they're minimizing length, right? Anyways, before they even get in there at check-in. When we run our reservation sites, that's very explicitly detailed on the reservation sites. And then we have phone operators that can help people understand that when they come in too.
And people on ground.
And people on ground also. So I 100% get your concern. And we went round and round on that. And I measured sites in a bunch of different places, and it's pretty standard. We're actually bigger than a lot of them on the space to pull in.
Mhm.
I just have just an off question on it that keeps coming to my head. Why did you pick this specific spot for this specific product?
Because I think it's the perfect spot for it in our city. And the reason being, when people are,
Like in the middle of the city.
yes, it is in the middle of the city.
And there's a market for that.
And
I know there's a market for your product for sure.
No, for being in the city. So we run the Shallow Lake Campground as well. And there are people that, so 2020 brought in a whole slew of new campers, people that were camping for the first time. And they still want their comfort, they still want their security, and they still want to be able to go to the places in the city. They don't want to be out in the woods. I'm with you on that. I am a person that goes out in the middle of the boondocks, and I don't want to be in a campground. But there are people out there that need that. They need that security. They need to be able to access what the city has for them. And we're seeing more and more of that since 2020. I thought it was going to kind of curb off, but it's not. There's more and more that they want that security of being in the city and having those amenities available to them.
And so why this spot? This spot, when you look at it, we looked at several other spots, and the vision of this is to keep it open and inviting to not only our guests, but the city.
And the
right?
city and the community.
So when you look at this spot, all of these sites are on top of the hill. If you haven't been there, it's very varied in topography. So the sites are elevated, which gives two purposes. One, you have some views out of some of those sites. And number two, as you're traveling central, you're not going to see a lot of those sites. They're going to be hidden on top. And so what you'll see from the bottom along central is more of like a park with the water retention, the main road in, the walking trails and stuff like that. Also, we chose this spot because of the traffic implication. So you have multiple entrances and exits out of the park that guests can leave in their vehicle and go north, south, east, or west. That's the only property we've found in the city that does that. So it minimizes that flow of traffic in and out of the park. And so there's some other properties out there, but honestly, they didn't meet all those requirements. So, hope I answered that.
Oh, I'm just spitballing it with you.
Yeah.
See why there. I see your vision on it going up the hill. Have a little concern with your topography on how you're gonna set those sites to be accommodating to beers
That are new to it. And
on the sloping sides, you know. So, see it.
A lot of dirt work.
A lot of dollar bills.
Yes, it is.
Our goal is to make the main entrance obvious.
Right.
Central and looking at this picture. Within traffic. But at this point, you're already in the park, going to the park district. This makes the RV travel over here where it'll then level, just reduce the amount of power needed to pull it up the hill. Once they're up on top, they're just gonna be moving around, doing their thing, getting into their space. And hopefully, if they exit out onto Owens, they're gonna be traveling downhill. Back, and I think it would be a very real moving through the Also, your concern on Owens about setback, we are putting the barrier defense 10 feet setback, and that will be a 20-foot road. Also, you'll see a certain amount of vegetation at the end of each that would actually work. So it's going to be quite a ways. Really, that's what we're looking to do, is make it quiet, nice. The access to go to town, be able to walk home, go out and enjoy nightlife.
And there will be policies in place. I know there's issues with some people that, with noise and how that's going to be. We're going to implement our policies that we have. There are quiet hours. There's not going to be like generators going. There's not going to be, concerts going. There's not going to be any of that kind of stuff. This is going to be an RV recreation area. And so there will be policies in place for those quiet hours.
Allow check-ins all hours of the night, or check-ins, like
There will be check-ins at certain amount of hours, and then there'll be late check-ins. There's always late check-ins. That there'll be a policy in place for that as well, how people deal with that. But there will be on-site hosts 24/7 on the site.
So I could see during peak times, you're going to have a fair amount of staff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll have, I believe there's 3 host sites involved on-site living, and then more staff that will be on day-to-day basis.
Also see where dynamics of the shopping center that's nearby and the restaurants that are nearby, located at Central and the Deuce Clubs. There's going to be an extreme amount of increased pressure and traffic in that particular intersection, which is already fairly heavy. But that will be a boon to those restaurants that are in that area, I think, and to those businesses that are there. Question is whether we'll be able to absorb that or not. Now, it appears to me that you're planning to have convenience stores and other things there so that people can get, I wouldn't necessarily go to the extreme of calling it glamping, but more in that direction. So these people want to have the convenience of having everything at hand. And they're also going to be willing probably to walk down to the Deuce Clubs and patronize all of those businesses that are in that area. Is that your anticipation as well?
Yes.
I would also anticipate that as this takes off, some of those empty spaces would get filled with other entrepreneurs that would take advantage of the situation.
All pro-business, I'm just trying to get my head around.
I have friends that so we have, and these what do also there's parks where there's park models and for those folks now make that available to people along. Just going to kind of organize it a little bit in my.
And the thing is, like he said, they're already here, and the risk is already here. So we need to manage the risk. And we in 30 years of campground management, we know the risks that are involved, and we manage those, and we have policies in place for those. And I get it. We both have lived here all of our lives. We've seen some major changes. I think we've only had one stoplight here when we were kids.
We used to play on the sawmill there.
Yeah, exactly. And so change is hard, but like he said, we've been found out. And so there
what he
is,
said.
yeah. And so it's have to manage that risk. And I am not in for having a bunch of people just stay there and building all this stuff. We want to build, we're a community that we're a tourist community. I mean, everybody agrees with that. Everyone comes up here for our beautiful forest, our beautiful lakes, what we have, and cooler weather, even though it hasn't felt like that in this last month, but better than 118 down in Phoenix, I guess. So people are flocking here. We just got to give them a place, right? And so that's what we're doing, but we want to do it to where it benefits the community as well, because Jason and I have lived here all of our lives, and we do want to make sure that we're a partner with the city, we're a partner with the community, that we're doing it in a way that benefits everybody. And that's what we're trying to do here. And we are open. If we have a flaw in the system and we can make it better, we're willing to do that. And we just want to be able to give a place to have someone come and enjoy our community and give
Without burning our forest down.
without burning our forest down, but also where our community members can come and enjoy as well. Like our walking, having our walking trails, having our dog parks, having all that there as well. So we're trying to have both.
Combine it all.
You all been to the top of that property? Yeah. Notice how when you look at that, all you see is trees. That's one of the things we're promoting here is that I feel like woods. Overall.
That we're willing to listen to everything too and see what we need to do.
Commissioner Wilson.
You did answer one of my questions just a minute ago, Trish, but the other one I noticed is you plan on having some kind of pond here.
Mhm.
So how deep is that pond going to be? And is there any concern when you have community members and recreational members and children around this pond, for any type of drowning or?
There's city codes that restrict the angle of the banks and the depth and all that stuff. So we're going to adhere to that. And that retention pond will be built with that in mind. So if somebody does go in, they can crawl out. That'll be a future concern for sure. But
Well, we want to work with Game and Fish as well to be able to stock those and to have a urban fishing and to have clinics for kids and families to come and utilize those ponds as well.
Commissioner Roberts.
One last question for our city engineer. Apologize, Shane. McNeil has a cul-de-sac there on the west side. Are we anticipating that at some point in the future, they're going to extend that out to connect with Central?
That cul-de-sac was created and established back in I think the early 90s. And that will not be a through road. That is going to stay, the cul-de-sac it is by Los Corrales. McNeil will be just T-bone Central right there, that location.
So I could see additional traffic issues if we made that a four-way intersection there.
Just talking about the traffic issues, I don't know, just to give you a little more heads up too, we've been talking with ADOT for the past 6 months about that intersection at Central and the Dusa. I don't know if you take a left there where there should be a turn arrow. Have to run the red to take that left. It's challenging. They've done the counts on it. They were looking through to finishing their report to see if it meets those counts or not. But we're constantly on ADOT to continue to evaluate these signals as we get busier and busier. And that's one that's on the table right now. We'll work with our district engineer and ADOT.
I mean, that came up in your conversations last Friday when they were here for their meeting.
And before that.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
You said parking for trailers and stuff. Are you anticipating a certain number of parking spots for those trailers or those toys to park at?
No, we're gonna focus people to park them in their space or at their space, so that, that overflow will be, where you can disconnect and things like that, and then get into your space. Or say you have family members coming that want to
Visiting.
visit or something like that, that's more what that'll be directed.
Other questions for the applicant? All right, my turn. Are you planning on age restricting the park?
No.
Okay. And you may have mentioned this earlier, and I apologize if I missed it. Are you planning to be 100% closed in the winter? Okay, so open year round. Okay, like all the spots open year round is the plan.
Sure.
Okay. And going back to the issue of the pond, and I know Shane will have his red pen for whatever you submit on that, but is your plan to have not just a stormwater detention basin, but to have a pond that has water in it full time for fishing or other types of recreation?
Yes, so as we develop the park, it will be a stormwater retention pond.
Okay.
And then as we near completion, we'll have that designed to be more of a recreation area. And like Tricia was talking about, to have some of that more urban style fishing. And
But for the first couple phases, it would just be stormwater detention,
yes, sir.
or what Shane says you have to have. Great. I'll pivot to a quick question for Katie before I come back to you guys. For these conditional use permits, if they sell the park, would the conditional use permit transfer with the ownership? Or how does that work for this type of
Right.
project?
So this one does not say that is non-transferable. So it could be transferred.
And so, just to clarify, when they're talking about, we're going to be open year round, we're not going to be age restricted, we're going to have a 21-day stay limit, that those are not conditions of the conditional use permit, and so those could change down the line.
They could, as part of the this meeting and while they're here, that could be something that, as part of this, if they agree to it, that can be binding, if they agree to it. So it's not specific.
But not necessarily binding, just to
Right.
clarify.
Mhm.
Okay. Great. So I mean, the way I come at this project is, I have to think about it. I see a lot of, pretty pictures that come through here and really grand ideas of developments that'll help out the town. And it's easy to get excited about them. It's, and I think it's good for us to sit up here and kind of talk through the pros and cons of, hey, this is going to increase traffic. This might also, benefit local businesses. There's pros and cons to all these types of developments. And I'm a very pro-development guy. I want to see Sholo grow. I want to see it grow, responsibly and smart. But I also have to think, past you standing here showing me a pretty picture in this, 2-hour meeting. And so I do have to think of, hey, if you guys, I know you're Sholo people, and I think it's great for, locals who are trying to do development in this town. I think that's a really community-oriented thing, and I think that's awesome. But I get concerned about, hey, what does this look like in 5 years and in 10 years? And because, I'm hoping that my kids will get to stay up here and my family can be part of this community for a long time. And, part of that, it's kind of fun to get to be on this side of the table to, hey, how do we make that happen? And so I do have some concerns on, I think it's a great idea for you guys to have a 21-day stay limit. There's, additional traffic issues that come with that. But, to keep people from living there full time as, low income housing, especially given the central location in town, I do think that, that particular condition is important for this. And so I would be interested if you guys would consider that being more of a binding piece of this, just for preserving this type of facility going forward.
Yep.
And then on your site plan for your individual lots that you're showing here, you're not showing parking spots besides the RV parking spot on each site. And maybe this is actually more of a question for Katie. Is a parking spot required per city code in a RV park on the lot itself? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Let me refer to my code here.
Because I am concerned if people are bringing up, multiple vehicles and all their fun toys. I mean, you have a 24-foot wide, which is great. But again, thinking down the line.
So this, with the long RV spot where this one's parked,
Okay.
and
A parking spot next to it.
So, and we're going to try to deter that from the very beginning as well with the reservation side of it. So there's going to be a set amount of what they're allowed to bring in before they make that reservation.
Again, that can change, right? And
It can change, but they're going to be turned away if that does happen because they're going to be told,
Long-term change,
huh?
long-term.
Oh,
change.
long-term.
Right, like if you guys, if your children are running this, they might have a different idea of
Oh,
what they
I see
want it
what
to
you're
look
saying.
like. And so I'm just trying to think about it from that perspective of, hey, what is, are there going to be, 5,000 cars, jammed in here? And it's just a concern of mine.
Right.
And
Legitimate.
Yep.
According to city code, we don't specifically have RV, but we do have manufactured home parks and subdivisions, which are similar. They're in the same section of the code that goes over RV parks. And that one says two parking spaces per site.
okay. But that probably would not apply to this because these units, like the lot size is too small for them, I would say.
Well, at
The lot
50
can do too, right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Well,
so
you
the
could do
lot can do
another
too.
one, right?
So in the parks that we manage right now is a two-person max or two-car max with eight-person max ability, and that's what we're going to be doing here as well. And I don't know how the city code works. I mean, we could even, I'm sure we'd all be fine with making that binding thing as well. Yeah, I mean, I think we're fine with that,
Yes.
right? So we're totally fine with that. That's what we run all of our campgrounds at, is 2 vehicle max, 8-person max, and we'd be fine with it.
And I think Chairman Barlow's perspective is well-founded.
Oh,
We need
absolutely.
to look beyond your life and into the city's going to last a lot longer than any of us.
Absolutely.
So we need to be looking downstream to make sure that the city continues to have the same atmosphere and same parameters that we're doing right now, because they all sound great to us, but again, generational changes come along and somebody else may have a different
I know
idea.
my kids won't be interested, but I get what you're saying. But that's our passion as well. And so that's part of is protecting the resources that we do have. That's part of our mission is, I mean, we're big on our community and we want to protect the resources of our community and we don't want to overcrowd that. This isn't just a huge, just get as much money as we can. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is build a legacy of a place that people can come, not only our visitors, but our community as well. And we don't want to just crowd that in. And so anything that goes against our moral and the city, I mean, we've been big in the city community for all of our years, and we're not going to go against that. And we're a great partner with the city. We have always have been. And anything that comes that way. So, but if it needs to be binding, we're all on board and we will do that.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Hey, what- So you say 2 vehicles, is a trailer considered one vehicle or is?
If it fits on the site. So a vehicle can
You
be
have
like a big
you know,
Hummer.
big fifth wheel, and then can you have 2 cars? I mean,
Right.
is that?
So that's what we
trailer-
have in our campgrounds, as long as it fits on the site and not going off the spur.
So-
That's the biggest thing.
Right, so if you back in a short motorhome with a trailer on it. They've
Mhm.
offloaded a Jeep next to it, that would be 2 vehicles.
Yes,
But if you're pulling a,
I mean, you got a 50-foot,
right,
toy hauler, and is that one vehicle and your truck's the second vehicle?
exactly,
You can't bring them, the minivan with all the,
right.
right,
One follow-up question I have, I know you briefly mentioned it on, that this project would employ several people. I mean, it's gonna take some operational
Absolutely, yeah.
force to keep this running. I see that you have the host area shown on here. So your intent would be those people would potentially be year round. They wouldn't be subject to the 21-day limit, which I think is
Right,
understandable.
right. But they would still have restrictions on them,
Right.
what they could do.
Oh, pink flamingos.
But those would, I mean, that would be a paying job in town that would be created, right? I mean, or free rent or however you,
Right.
that type of thing. And then and so those could potentially be kind of out of town jobs, like someone comes up and,
So what we call them are work campers. So what they do is, these are people that are full-time RVers, and they travel around. Some stay, some move on to their next adventure or whatever they want to do. But we do have some that just stay for the summer and move on to the next place, and then we bring on people that want to stay in the winter time. So it's always constantly moving.
Sorry, things keep coming up.
Commissioner
there-
Whipple.
Sorry, is there a limit as far as like when they come for the 21 days, do they get to leave for a day and come back for 21, or do you have?
21 days within a month. So they have to leave, yeah, so they have to be able to leave, and they can have that week and then come back for another 21 days. So what that does is keep them just moving, so where they don't set up shop, so to say. They don't put their porches up, they don't put their pink flamingos up, they don't, so they just keeps them fluid. Now, there are policies in place that if they are a problem, if they don't adhere to the park's rules, then they are not allowed to come back. It's the same thing that we do at Shallow Lake, so we have a 21-day stay limit there. But if they don't keep a clean site, if they have traffic coming in and out, there's certain things that they're banned from that.
it also provides an opportunity for other people to come in.
Yes.
So that 21 days, what we would anticipate, parks similar to this would be full pretty much at least in the peak.
Mhm.
And so as they move out, you've got reservations coming right back in behind them. And that allows that flow to just continue to move. One of those examples, like Walhalla Lake Park,
Mhm.
their RV sites are on a year wait list, and people wait at midnight to get their next year, right? And so it's an opportunity for that flow to continue to just keep moving. So
And believe me, we get a lot of phone calls to see if we're going to be year round. They want to be able to stay here, but we're not going to allow it.
Well, that's similar to what the Forest Service has with their 14 days
Yep.
limitation.
Absolutely.
People maneuver around that. I'm sorry.
no, you're good. I know Ashley.
I'm handwriting right now. I'm not on the computer, guys. I'm handwriting.
I'm sorry. Raise my hand. Shorthand.
Yeah.
No computer.
A lot of these people that can't stay in that still come. Just try to-
Any other questions for the applicant? I thank you guys very much. I anticipate you'll be back up. Oh, was there another
I have
question?
just
Commissioner
one
Roberts. Okay.
Thank you for doing this. We appreciate that you are quality camp hosts and you have a lot of experience at this. It's necessary, we need it, because the growth is going to come whether we manage it or don't manage it, and it's better if we can manage it, because it's going to be here one way or another. And we appreciate that you're putting the time and effort into this and looking out for your hometown to do all of this kind of stuff. We recognize that your campgrounds, the Foo Hollow campground is so popular and it's run really, really well. So it's quality run, and it's nice that you have that experience and you can transfer that to this. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the fact that you're willing to work with our city, get that kind of stuff done.
Know that one of the drivers for this project, we ran the Lakeside Campground before it was decommissioned, right up there across from the Lakeside Ranger District and Apache. And that was by far one of our most popular camp RV areas. And so that was decommissioned, what, 8 or 10 years ago? And the need was there then. And it's only getting more and more now. So we appreciate you guys letting us come in front of you and talk to you and present an idea.
Thank you guys very much. I assume you'll be back up
Sure.
to respond to some of the public comments. Before I move into that part of the meeting, I have a couple follow-up questions for staff. They show on their site plan a solid wall along the east border. One of the conditions is a fence or some other type of barrier between lots 147 and 152 along Central. Is the one along Central the only one that is required? Is the one along the east boundary required per city code somewhere else? And are there any other fences required for this development?
There is no, as far as the one that's along Central, there's no requirement for that. It's just the those spaces 147 through 152. Yeah, there's no requirement for that. Staff was just thinking, as far as, that's kind of a very visible area, to kind of, keep it clean. So fence, vegetation, something like that screens it from the city right of ways.
Yeah, and I'm supportive of that condition, but the solid wall on the east border is not necessarily required. Okay, but are they bound to it because it's on their site plan that we are having under consideration this evening? Okay.
Yeah, there's in our pre-application meetings, it was something that they had committed to. We also have asked them to do some upgraded landscaping. That's not required per code, but just so the neighbors to the east, they're not just looking at a block wall with RV spaces right next to it. That's a little bit of a vegetative barrier there.
And then I can't remember which commissioner brought up a possibility of some type of fence or wall on the north property line, but that's not shown on this plan or is necessarily a staff recommendation for a condition.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you everyone for waiting patiently. I will move into the public comment portion of this. And so I know this meeting's gone on a little ways already, so thank you everyone for being patient, and it's great to see people engaged in the community. I always appreciate that. And so we'll try to keep this fairly efficient. If you could limit your comments to 3 minutes. When you come up, please state your name clearly and your address clearly for the minutes. Ashley will appreciate that. And if you could also make sure that you've signed in on the sheet when you come in, that helps us with the minutes as well. And I anticipate that a lot of you have similar concerns, and so if you would not mind possibly even sending up, one representative to voice those concerns, that can allow us to kind of hear what the community and the neighborhood is thinking on this particular project while keeping the meeting efficient. And so if there's anyone from the public who would like to come up and comment on this matter, please you can form a line or come up to the podium one at a time. And remember, state your name and address when you get started. And sorry, I forgot to mention this. We will not respond to the comments. Is that correct? Yes, we will not respond to the comments. Staff won't answer any questions until after all members of the public have come up and said their piece, and then we'll have kind of a open time of staff, the applicant can answer kind of the general concerns that are brought up. So thank you.
I understand. I'm
Yeah.
Jeannie Blum. I live at 61 Timber Ridge Loop. So I'm at the top of the hill and I'm across from an empty lot that will have direct access to the new street that's going through and the place where people will be driving their quads because it's an empty lot. And my concern is the traffic on that new, not having access to Central until the third phase is going to be a big deal on that lot because the people between the new road where they're building it, Owens, and Timber Ridge are a row of houses that now have two roads on both sides. They're going to add 100 and some more vehicles using only that road. Central already is overcrowded. I know that just getting home some days, especially if there's a parade, may take hours. And I just walk because it's faster. But that is one of my major concerns. The other is, I don't know how many people are concerned about this, but that's a major thoroughfare for the elk too. We're going to have a lot of accidents with the elk coming through there. They come through there almost on a regular basis. I see them, I don't know, 3-4 times a week. And they travel right through that area on a daily basis. And then what your concern was is the long term, is this going to turn into a trailer park? Because, it's my community too, but it's also my neighborhood. And I know many of my neighbors are here today also. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Michael Crane. I live at 671 South Mountain Pines Avenue in Pine Haven. And my concern isn't with the park. The concept's okay with me. My concern is I haven't heard anyone talk about a little further downstream. We have sat on our porch in Pine Haven for the last 5 years, and every weekend there's a parade of RVs that come in from Phoenix on the 260 and from Globe, Tucson on the 60 and turn up Whipple. Well, they've only been needing to turn right for the last 5 years. To make a left-hand turn with a 40-foot fifth wheel and truck at a four-way stop, it's going to be a lot different. So I hope you'll take that into consideration. But one of my concerns is that with these longer rigs and then the rig that'll follow with ATVs and the razors and everything, we see that especially on holiday weekends, they will back up really quickly to Pine Haven's entrance. And once one person starts turning to make that shortcut down Mountain Pines to where it tees into Owens, they'll just start following each other. And imagine, like Miss Wilson mentioned, 300 vehicles on a weekend coming through your neighborhood with half of them towing RVs and another half towing razors and kayaks and bicycles. Our neighborhood will be a disaster. So if you would give that some consideration. We already get quite a few people that don't want to go to the four-way, so they cut through Pine Haven. But boy, with RVs and 152 lots in Mountain Pines going to Owens, it's going to definitely be the preferred shortcut. So if you would take that into consideration, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
My name's Julie Crane and his wife, 671 South Mountain Pines Avenue. I have a statement and then I also have a concern. They said they were going to open it up to the community. There's been no discussion of parking for the community. You go to the meadow you have parking, you can park, get out, walk the trails. If there's no parking for community access, then they're going to be parking in our neighborhood and walking across. That's my one concern. 152 units, 2 vehicles each, is 300 vehicles coming through the four-way stop, the neighborhood. It's hard for us to even get out of our community as it is. And then my statement is, I've lived in Pine Haven for 5 years, pretty much the same distance. I have never once walked to Los Corrales. So I doubt that very many people are going to walk. They're going to get on Central and they're going to clog this artery right here, trying to get to some of the local restaurants. So, thank you.
Hello. I'm Renee Alamina. My husband and I have a home at 81 Timber Ridge, and we also have concerns. Most of them relate to the increase in traffic, which we all know is going to be a significant problem. Everyone's talked about it, so I'll skip over that. We also have concerns about the decrease in our property values. As they indicated, their site is above ours, so we have concerns about flooding and situations like that. But whereas their people, if they are approved, will be looking at trees, we will be looking at that, and that is going to decrease our property values. It's also not appealing to us to have that. We have people that live directly adjacent, that's going to be their new view, and we just need to know that there's going to be a lot of consideration for that. We had other things, but I think our people have covered them. I wanted to know, I did have questions about whether during camping or any kind of fires are going to be allowed. I heard somebody say something about a fire pit, but I don't know what kind it is. And I didn't see the site plan. We got our letter in Tucson on Thursday, so we didn't have a lot of time to kind of think about this and prepare. So I think that's all I have right now. They've covered it all. The rest.
Hey, I'm sorry. Can I get you to spell your last name, please, ma'am?
ALI, M as in Mary, E, N as in Nancy, A.
Thank you.
Charles Lucas, 630 South Mountain Pines Avenue in Cholo. My concern is Central Avenue. It gets real busy right now. You add those others. Currently, you have a turning lane at Whipple, and you have a turning lane at Deuce 260. I suggest that they absorb some of the cost for what they are bringing on to Central, and you just continue the turning lane as all the way through to both ends. So it's a deceleration so they can get into the park and an acceleration for them to come out and to move into the traffic lane. Without that, it's just going to block up and clog the whole artery of Central Avenue every time a 40-foot rig being pulled by a pickup truck is trying to get out and come up to speed. Pretty much what I have for you. Thank you.
So I'm Larry Garrison. My address is 340 East Reedhead Street. I'm here in a double role. One is a private citizen who lives in Timber Ridge, but I am also the associate pastor at Calvary Baptist Church, who's also directly within the 300-foot affected area. The questions I have is, one, on the fence that's going around, do we know what the height of that is going to be? And so, people commented about a fence, but not directly about the size. I have been through there multiple times. People have commented about the elk that go through there. And so it is a traffic area for elk. In the area there was a comment about walking trails. My question would be, are those going to be only for the trailer court, or are they available to the public? And so access and availability for those walking trails, because that's an ideal area because of its ideal location. It also makes a nice area, a beautiful area for walking and things like that. And then finally, you had commented about the only receiving like 3 people responding. Please do not indicate that as indicative. Quite a few people of people's concerns, because several people have talked to me and don't understand the procedure of having received that letter and contacting the city. So there are more concerns than what the 3 phone calls would indicate. But those are the primary concerns that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Curtis Furno, 621 South Mountain Pines Avenue. I'm looking at it from both sides. If it's a nice RV park that has sidewalks where people can walk, curbs, gutters maybe, paved roads throughout the facility instead of gravel. I am concerned about the number of units. 152 kind of floored me. That seems to me to be an awful lot. We pull a fifth wheel. I can pull a trailer with a car in it. So if I had a trailer with a car, I don't have a quad or anything, but I do have a car that'll fit in the trailer. And we've been to different RV parks that have places for excess cars, because if I have a fifth wheel and drop it, then I've got my car. If I have a motorcycle or something in that trailer, then they're normally, most of the parks that I've been in, they have excess parking for another vehicle, especially if you have somebody come to visit you. If somebody comes here from one of the valleys or wherever they come from, they might want to come to visit. Maybe they can't stay there, but they have to have someplace to park. So you might have a party, a birthday party or something. Where do these people park? I don't want them parking in front of my house. I live in Pine Haven, a rock's throw away from this subdivision. And also the engineering on this, there's quite a distance in elevation. They've got a wash going through there that I assume is going to feed the pond. Maybe they can culvert over it and have some common area on it. I would like to have seen a rendering of something that kind of shows the vehicles going on. And what was mentioned before was the front and the side and the rear. Well, what's the front and the side and the rear? Is it the north, the south, the east, the west? I do like the fact that they've got power, water, and sewer to each one of the locations. I like that. But comes back to me 152 units. Wow, that's a lot. That's a big impact. And has there been a study on what it does to the property values of people that live next to them? What's it going to do to us? There's a bunch of real nice houses in Pine Haven. I don't know, 152, it just seems like an awful lot for that small area, especially when you have the square in parking is their drive-through. I see a little bit of a plot here, but somebody mentioned before, when it's at an angle, it's easy to back in. I mean, I can pull in back a trailer pretty well, but a lot of people can't. Maybe when they're angled, you can't get as many units in. I know the object is to make money. I've got 2 friends that stay at the Honda RV park. They stay there 6 months out of the year. And I heard that they're adding 500 more spots. The 21, if this is a Class A facility, I know we've tried to get into some parks and they ask us a question, is your RV 10 years old or newer? I've seen a lot of these people that live in them full time. I mean, bless their souls, that's all they have, but the unit could be 50 years old. I mean, maybe they came from Hollywood and they're Beverly Hillbillies. I don't know. But I would not like to see something like that there. If it's a nice park, I'd hate to see them restricted to 21 days though, because my friends that stay in Honda RV park, I think it costs them $500 a month to stay there. And then they pay an extra 50 or 75 a month through the winter just to keep their spot. And they're good people. I mean, they take care of the place they've got there, and I don't know, it still sticks me, the 152 spots. It seems like an awful lot. Thanks, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
My name is Russ Alamina. I'm also at 81 Timber Ridge. I'm just going to cover a few things that my wife didn't. First of all, I'm really impressed with the city council on their concerns. Mr. Hatch, I'm particularly impressed with your questions and your concern because it's kind of the same area that I'm in. The generators, I know they said they shut them off at night, but a lot of these campers, they run them daily. They live in these things, going to be living in these things. So I'm looking at 60, 70, 80 generators running all day. And this is all residential area, all around it. And we're especially going to be hearing these generators all day long. And I appreciate the fact that you're going to have a time limit on them at night. The second thing that I'm concerned about is road infrastructure. I'm in the transportation industry, and I know what heavy vehicles do to roads. And I can tell you right now, when them roads are hot and they turn, they push that asphalt. It's not going to be long before we're going to have a lot of road damage, especially in the four-way stop signs. And I think that's something that if you're from the Valley or from Tucson, you're very, very aware of. I think the big problem too, in maneuvering vehicles, I was in the semi industry. I think you said the road was 24 feet wide. A 60-foot trailer, truck and trailer, or even a 40-foot, it takes half the distance to make the turn, which means when they're coming out, they got to cross both lanes of traffic and come in. There's no way to get around that unless you put a merger lane in or something like that. That is just a given, and that concerns me also. We've got such a bottleneck on Central the way it is. What if a couple of them get out there and then they're waiting behind the next guy and all this traffic is blocked? And I think that's another thing that we need to take into consideration. McNeil does not have a center turn lane, so they're going to have to go all the way across into the other lane of traffic to come in. The infrastructure for this is not right. And I think it's a wonderful idea, don't get me wrong. I think it's a great idea, but the wrong place. I think it's a residential area, it's too crowded, and we can try and make all of these adjustments, but in the end, it's the people around it that's going to suffer. And like I said, I'm really impressed with the concerns that all of you had, because I just didn't want this to be a formality, but I do think you're hearing our voices. So I appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thought you were just waiting around for fun.
So Roy Delatore, 531 East McNeil. Just because I haven't heard anyone mention it, but there's a school right there, Nicholas Homestead, and in the morning it's kind of a nightmare for people to get in. You know how it is now. So let's say like a trailer or whatever gets stuck in the morning, you know, and everyone's just piling on there. That's just something to look at. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
What it's there for.
Bill Skibby, Skibbe, 721 South. Too fast?
Just a little bit.
Sorry. Bill Skibby, Skibbe.
EV as in Victor.
E as in boy.
Okay. BB.
E.
Got it.
721 South Pine Haven, you got that. I just have one concern in addition to the other concerns.
there used to be a lot of sawdust up there. And it soaks up water really good, and there's gonna be a lot of asphalt up there. And it's gonna come down the hill, and I live down the hill. And we already have some water runoff issues from the last storm, the storm this year, the big one last year. So is a 20,000 square foot retention pond adequate to hold? It's probably for Shane. Is it adequate to hold what water is going to come off of there? Thanks.
Any other members of the public? All right, I will close that portion of the meeting, and I'll bring it back to staff first to have any of their responses, answer some of those collective questions, and then I'll also give the applicant another chance to come forward and address some of the concerns. So Katie's been making lots of notes, so.
Yes. I did hear there was a question about the fire pits, if they'll be allowed. They are indicating a fire pit for each of the spaces. The city does have a requirement that those will have to be reviewed and approved by Timber Mesa Fire and Medical to make sure that they meet all of their requirements. And I'm sure that the applicant can also speak to the requirements that they have regarding utilization during fire restrictions. There was a question about the height of the fence. As a standard, usually for screen fences, we consider that to be a 6-foot solid wall, so either like the block or solid wood fence. We do not consider chain link with slat to be a solid screen wall. And then also, yeah, we did send letters out to 68 people, and we are aware that, yeah, just because we received 3 phone calls, that there's definitely more. A lot of times when you don't receive anything, but when we receive 3 phone calls, we do consider that to be fairly indicative that there's going to be concerns. So we do take that into account. So I want you to know that we do understand that. And then there was a question, I want to say it was about the drainage, and Shane, our city engineer, might be able to answer that regarding the detention pond.
Yes, so we are at the early stages of this project. There's a lot of engineering that needs to be done. All this engineering will meet our code. There'll be a sewer analysis done, a water analysis done. There's going to be drainage analysis that we will require the adequate detention facility placed on site and be maintained the whole time. And that will be sized properly per our code. And any other issues along that wash along Central Avenue is a female floodplain. It's a zone AE. There's aspects of that floodplain that it also includes a floodway. Crossing a floodway and doing these things takes certain special parameters that need to be met. We'll have all these things that meet our floodplain code as we did with the previous crossing on Owens. Any development in that floodway is not allowed without extensive engineering. And there's different rules for the floodplain, and all those need to be met as well, part of our city code. Did I kind of touch everything there?
I think so. Shane, as far as ADOT goes, are they going to be concerned about this due to the proximity of this development to State Route 260 and 60?
I don't see ADOT having a voice on this one. Or they're far off there. They don't have access to the state highway. They access state or city roads.
Thank you.
And then I will follow up as far as the drainage. Shane had mentioned the city code requirements. We do also have that as a requirement for this CUP as for a recommendation. Number 3, that the plans for the construction, including grading and drainage, shall be done by a registered civil engineer and submitted to the city for review and approval prior to the commencement of any site work. And then we also, originally, the detention pond was indicated to be built during phase 3. After discussions with our city engineer, Mr. Hemsah, that we changed that requirement, that it should be developed with the first phase of the project and should be for the entire development. So, did any of you have any other questions for staff?
Any follow-up questions for staff based on those responses? Commissioner Hatch?
I just have one. Thinking about this one going forward long-term, 5, 10, 15 years, we grant this CUP, how hard or how easy would it be to transfer this development, because all the infrastructure is going to be put in the ground, to say like a vacation village or a Woodfield as a or then maybe what's the development to the south, manufactured homes, how Timber Ridge, how hard is that to take it? Okay, so this product came, went, now next use, how does that look? How easy?
So, yeah, so basically a lot of the requirements will be the same. You know, they still have to meet the city code requirements as far as grading, drainage, engineering. I don't see that it would be too much different. You know, probably of, you know, less density. So I don't think that would be a problem. Yeah, it's a density issue, yeah.
Follow up with that on the traffic on Central. To get that turn lane down to the 4-way stop on Whipple, right? Whipple, before it turns to Wolford. What is that process? We got to go through you and then go through ADOT and get a study and then granted money and we do it? I'm talking about Central from the signal to Whipple, which is 2-lane, right? Impacts Timber Ridge, impacts Pine Haven, 2 lanes. Got a 60-foot RV pulling out, 30-foot. I can absolutely see a catastrophe.
Going down Central right now, you'll notice you take a right on Owens into Pine Haven. There's no turn lane. You're going down, you take a left into Timber Ridge. There's no turn lane as well. There can be future traffic analysis done. There's time you'll meet warrants, you'll meet steps and things that trigger turn lanes, right turn lane, decel lane, and those things along those lines. Those can be done, yes.
Yeah, that's my question. Just kind of a scope of what's the end result time frame of that to happen.
And well, right now there's nothing.
The state 20 years, maybe.
Well, the state. So if you're talking about widening the signal, then you're getting ADOT involved. If you're adding lanes to the approach of the signal, then we're getting ADOT involved. We'll be asking them for a study, traffic analysis study to do it. It needs to meet certain warrants. Like I said, there's certain criteria that has to trigger certain amounts of traffic to justify that, and then you have to get plans done, get it in the CIP, and to get that project funded, and then it'll get constructed.
How difficult would it be to the turn in off of the new Owens, right? Because that's going to be the access to the park, correct? Phase 1.
Sure.
200 feet prior to 200 feet beyond, to push that to excel and decel turn lanes, come left or right. What would that take?
Take traffic analysis, see if it's warranted to do so, and then we have to get some design plans done, and then get it scheduled for funding in the 5-year plan.
That be city or that be state?
City. Central.
Same thing.
That's Central, right? That any widening of Central would be a city project. That's not a state route.
Commissioner Roberts.
Clarify that. Anything that we do on Central is going to be city funded and city managed. Anything that gets done on 260, the Deuce of Clubs, will be state funded and state managed.
Yes, once you hit it out right away, it's not our road anymore. It's down, it's the Deuce of Clubs, but it's a state route.
Could we put that as a requirement to have that done?
So I think we need to kind of keep in focus. There's a lot of, the state, the city, what the city is going to do as far as, widening turn lanes, what the state does at the highway. Neither of those are necessarily super relevant to this particular project. I do think it is worth a conversation what potential improvements might need to be made to Central Avenue by the developer in order to, as a condition.
That's exactly what I'm asking.
Okay.
I'm not saying the city to shoulder it, I'm saying the developer to shoulder it. Make his project amicable to those that are impacting, as well as the city.
And I'm gonna get a little over my skis, probably, Katie, so you can rein me in. But there are limitations on off-site improvements that we can require as part of a conditional use permit. We could request or make a condition of approval specific improvements directly related to this development, such as we could require a traffic study to analyze the traffic going into the proposed entrance at Central to determine if a left turn lane might be warranted. And then the applicant would prepare that study, Shane would review it and determine if that left turn lane is warranted. Then they would have to prepare the design plans and pay for the construction of that to support their development.
That's correct.
More eloquently.
I gotta follow it, Gentry. I gotta follow it.
That PhD paid off.
Thank you, Shane. Were there any other questions for Shane while he was up here? Any other follow-up questions for staff or have the applicant come back up? Commissioner Wilson?
We've heard the concerns of, the people that live nearby and stuff like that. We talk about having to have traffic studies and drainage studies and stuff like that. But yet we are required to vote on whether to put this into place without those studies, correct?
So basically, it is my understanding that the applicants have put in an offer on this property, and that they're wanting to see, is this even a possibility before that they, go to that expense. So they don't want to, go through the expense if it's not going to be approved. So as far as this goes, as far as approvals, you can, approve it as it is. You can deny it. If you deny it, you must state the reason why, and it has to be a reason that is directly related to the project, or you can approve it with additional conditions.
Any other questions for staff? I do have a couple. Going back to the traffic study, you mentioned that would be required. Is that's in city code? Is it with a certain number of units that would be required? I'm very interested in that being a condition of
Right.
the approval, and so can we just stipulate that we could do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then my other question, which has not come up, I probably should have asked it earlier, but they show on their site plan like a small commercial building area, 25,000 square feet. Essentially, if it's the use that they propose there when they go to get their building permit, if it's applicable or if it's a permitted use in the C2 zone, they could just get their building permit for it and go, even though they're requesting a CUP for a RV park.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
But they would have to go through the CUP process again if they were requesting a commercial use that required a conditional use.
Correct.
Okay.
It's different.
Right. And then this may just be clarifying because I know a couple people mentioned, members of the public mentioned paved roads within the park. That's not necessarily required, correct? As long as they meet minimum loading requirements for Timber Mesa's fire trucks, it could be a gravel access roads inside the park.
Right, any of the parking, like their, like host area or parking where they check in, that would be required to be paved.
Okay.
So,
But most of the access roads, you know, that big long road between the big long straight roads on the site plan would not necessarily need to be paved. Okay. Thank you for the clarification on that. All right, I think at this time I'll bring the applicant back up if you wanted to have an opportunity to respond to some of the comments and questions from members of the public.
There are a few concerns, one of them being generators. It's our plan not to operate generators, that's why we have electric to each site. So the residents shouldn't be hearing any of that going on. A lot of it, what I documented was just a lot of traffic study and plans. One of the question was, will there be a place for extra vehicles? Visitors to the park that aren't staying there will be able to stay or park in that commercial area, which will include an additional parking spot. Outside of that, it looks like the rest are traffic. Reference the fire rings. The fire rings that we installed in all our parks are federal approved ADA compliant fire rings, so they're just shy 2 feet tall that contain the fire and has burn buffers and stuff on them, so the visitors have less chance of getting hurt on them. Walking trails can be accessed by the public. Again, with that parking inside the park at the commercial area. And that commercial area will be developed out. And we're looking at, as stated before, like a coffee shop and a general store for the RV park itself. I think that covers what I can speak to.
One of the things that I might add, they were talking about the parade. I was down here during the parade, and there were so many signs and can't park here, can't park there, and we were talking about that, thinking that maybe along Central there on the east side, that we could put parking all along there that'd be available.
West side.
Sorry, east side of the road, I meant.
Yeah.
Side of the road, right?
East side of the road, west
Yeah.
side of the park, yes.
All right, east side of the road, that we could actually even create parking along there that would be available for events like that. But also additional parking for people who would like to enjoy the walking or even come up off. So that's something we can consider, maybe as part of this project.
One more thing was the too much asphalt and runoff. Our conceptual design does do gravel roads on top and adds that retention pond to assist with any of that runoff. So runoff should be pretty mitigated. We're also going to put in some more vegetation and trees and stuff to help with absorption and other runoff concerns. So. Yeah, quads restricted inside of our park. We have policies in place to restrict EV movements. Any vehicles coming out of the park in my prior line of work should also be registered and roadworthy, including tires and so on and so forth. So again, our goal isn't to overwhelm this with a party place. It's a place for people to come relax with a little bit of space between them, with enough shade and trees to make them feel like they're not right downtown, but are still downtown.
And I'd like to clarify too, it's not an RV park. This is a resort style living. So we're going to actually set the standard, the type of living. Again, my wife, we stay in resort. You know, not for the most.
And to this question for Katie, I guess. As for the traffic study, that was already in plan, right, for a requirement for us to do the development.
I think it's a condition.
Yeah, it's not a specific condition.
I know we talked about it.
I guess my question is, so what conditions are we looking at adding on tonight from what is?
I think once I'll want to give the commissioners an opportunity to ask any follow-up questions to the applicant, and then I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion, and then we can have that discussion of what potential additional conditions and our thoughts on this agenda item. So are there any? Sorry, if you guys got cut off. Did you have any other comments?
I was just looking through my notes. I think
Okay, thank you. And then any commissioners have any follow-up questions for the applicant? Commissioner Whipple?
What type of fence are you planning on building? You might have already answered that question.
Wood.
Block, or is it going to be wood fence?
It'd be wood.
Wood fence.
Yes, sir. Kind of go with the aesthetics of the area, the park itself.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. With that, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion on the site. Mr. Roberts.
So I'll restate that question that I was just asking. Yeah. What conditions are we looking at adding to this CUP? You know, we're looking at some long-term conditions so that if the property was to be sold or transferred, we might have some kind of like deed restrictions that travel with the property.
Sure.
And then the traffic study appears to be a condition that we need to add on.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to propose, any additional conditions that you think are pertinent to the property. Like Zach had said before, it has to be directly related to, mitigating the concerns of the neighbors. So that's, certainly within your right to do as a commission.
So I'm interested to hear what other people have thoughts on as far as additional conditions. I did put a little bit of thought into this project and some potential additions to the staff recommended conditions, and so I'll go through my thought process, and then I'll open it up to everyone can add or subtract based on their thoughts on that. First of all, kind of my general thoughts on this particular project. If I had a magic wand, I wouldn't put an RV park on this piece of ground in the middle of town. But also, I'm not the one here asking for this particular project, and this is we want to encourage development in this town, and I think that's super important. We want to do it smartly, and these are the people who've put this idea and this plan together, and they're coming before us tonight. So this is what we have to consider. Obviously, not my ideal situation going on this piece of ground. 152 units. I mean, that's a big ask, density wise, for a 20-acre commercial piece of ground in the middle of town. And so I want the public and the applicant to be aware, like, that is a really big ask. And so I really appreciate people turning out and spending quite a long time with us this evening, because does make a big difference in our town. My biggest concern, again, looking at the long-term aspects of this project, are I know that the applicant does not have this intention, and no one who comes before here ever does, that they're going to put a big hole in the ground, start something, and not finish it. And I don't want a big hole in the middle of town sitting unfinished for years. I think we all who've lived here a while know that there are a couple examples where that has happened, and that does not look good for our community. And part of what we get to do is work to, avoid things like that happening in our community and help that to not happen. And so one condition I would recommend to the commission would be to put a condition that the applicant will need to provide assurances in the form of a bond to the city prior to the construction, prior to the approval of a building permit for each phase. So that's very standard in subdivision development, where when a subdivision comes into town, the developer is required to front 120% of the engineer's estimate of the public infrastructure costs, give that money to the city in advance to ensure that the project gets completed. And so I think that, I know it's been done, or my understanding from Katie is that it has been done in the past with conditional use permits to require assurances that would ensure, based on an engineer's estimate of cost, that would ensure the project, at least per phase, gets completed, so that there's not a big scar on the side of the hill in the middle of town that doesn't get finished for a long time. And so that would be a condition I would recommend and be interested to hear others' thoughts on. I'll move on from that one. I like adding the 21-day stay limit to the conditional use permit. I would like it to also be a condition that there is a fence along the north boundary and the east boundary in addition to the fence required under staff recommendations. I would also like the 2-vehicle, 8-person max to be written. It sounded like you guys were on board with that. Katie mentioned this, but I kind of would like it in a little bit more set in stone that the improvements along Central, which at a minimum would require curb gutter and sidewalk along the C2 zone, it sounded like that would already be required to be, the percentage of the lots constructed would correspond to the percentage of the curb gutter and sidewalk that would be constructed. I'd like to set that a little bit more in stone because 95% of the lots are in phase 1 and 2. I would like to set that a little bit more in stone to say 50% of the curb gutter and sidewalk be with phase 1, 50% be in phase 2. And my preference would be that the connecting up to Whipple on the north side would be the first part of the sidewalk constructed, and then have access to the park via some type of trail from that. That way it does give residents there more of an opportunity to walk, so as to decrease the potential traffic load. I don't know necessarily how much that would get used, but I think by starting with that, I think we would be able to encourage that a little bit, which any little bit would help with that. And the applicant did discuss that the entrance off of Central would be the main entrance for the park. Here we have stipulated that main entrance would be constructed with phase 3. And I just have some concerns that, they could go out there and build phase 1, phase 2. Hey, we have 140 lots. We don't need to build that main entrance onto Central. We're only going to get, 6 more lots out of that. So there's not a lot of incentive for that main entrance to be built. And so I would like a condition added that the main entrance be constructed with phase 2 at the latest. And one other thought, and this may be, Shane might tell me he doesn't like this idea, but instead of sidewalk, the applicant on their site plan is proposing, walking trails along that lower part of the project anyway. If Shane was up for it, I wonder if we could trade the sidewalk for a detached walking path that's paved along the side of there, kind of serving twofold purpose. You get your sidewalk and you get your walking trail along Central Avenue there. I think it would look nice and provide some benefit and allow you to use a little bit of extra room. I'm not sure what kind of right of way you have there, Shane. If a detached trail would fit, it would. Okay. So I would like to recommend that as well.
Or just for clarification, you want the detached walking trail as opposed to the concrete sidewalk?
As an option. Yes.
And just to point out, we do have a similar setup on 16th Street.
And it looks really good. So
That was very
if it looked
popular.
like that, I'd be very excited. And those are generally all of my thoughts. So I'll open it up to any of the other commissioners to critique, add, or subtract. Commissioner Whipple.
It all sounds pretty good. I'm wondering if we can add, because they mentioned adding parking, kind of like what we have right here along 9th, just with the traffic, with parades and things like that. If we had them add parking on the street right there, if that would be something that we could look at doing.
Shane might have
right away wise if there's enough room for that.
Central is a spoke of minor arterial. We want to limit the conflicts on a minor arterial, so we'd want to not have the backing out, pulling in action. Anything interior that can offer us parking is ideal. Someone to pull in off the busy road and then to walk around or get out of their vehicle. That's what we want to see. We would discourage actually any sort of street parking along arterials that are Whipple, Oland, and Central, etc.
And inside. That's, I think, would be the concept for doing this.
Yeah, as an option, and as opposed to.
I'll make it. The question was asked, what was I referring to on that area? But on 16th Street, we have the K-Bar RV Resort there, and going from that K-Bar RV Resort over to Old Linden Road is this type of concept that we're talking about doing, where it has a meandering sidewalk that runs from K-Bar down to Old Linden Road. So this concept right here would be similar to that. Is that correct, Shane?
Correct.
Okay. And that's been very popular. It's been well received from the residents and from people who drive by. It's very pleasant. And instead of having just a cut and dried sidewalk that runs straight from McNeil all the way down to Old Linden Road, we have a nice, pleasant park-style sidewalk that runs alongside there. So that would be a sort of a combined result to have that there. Instead of a nice straight sidewalk, we can have that meandering trail right alongside the road there, just like what we have over there by K-Bar. Yeah, could be either one.
And city code would allow either one, Shane. Any other thoughts from the commission? Commissioner Wilson.
I'm good with that. I'm torn. I think this is going to be beautiful. I really do. I think that the hillside where you guys have it all planned out and the pond and the map you have is really beautiful. I understand the community's concerns on this as well. It takes me back to NIMBY, not in my backyard, and it's like so many projects we have to decide this. And I think if we can put those conditions in, I would be more leaning towards, yeah, let's do this, you know, as long as we have those conditions.
Was there general consensus on
That's why we have a PhD up here.
list of conditions?
Write it up, Zach. Let's go.
So I'm sorry, just to clarify, so your stance is you're in agreement with
Yes.
with Chairman Barlow's added requirements? Okay.
Okay. And there's general consensus on that. And so with that, I will go ahead and make the motion because I need to list all those correct. All right.
Well, you get paid the big bucks there, dude.
Right. All right, let me find it. I move to approve CUP 602-04-261 submitted by Jason Spear to allow for a recreational vehicle resort on property located at 100 East Owens /201 South Central Avenue, that being APN 210-13-001F, subject to staff recommendations and the following recommendations. That a meandering asphalt or concrete trail constructed and approved per city standard be considered instead of an attached sidewalk along Central Avenue. That the RV park operation be limited to a 21-day stay limit exclusive of the hosts of the park. That a fence be required in addition to the one noted on staff recommendations, be also required along the north and east boundary, a solid material 6-foot fence standard for the city. That the sidewalk or the improvements along Central, including curb, gutter, sidewalk, or trail, be constructed 50% with the proposed phase 1 and 50% with the proposed phase 2. That the main entrance or the access off of Central Avenue be constructed and be a part of the requirements for obtaining the building permit for phase 2 at the latest. That the park operation also adopt a 2-vehicle 8-person maximum. That a traffic study be required to particularly study the impacts on Owens prior to the main entrance on Central being opened, and also I'm primarily concerned about a potential left turn lane being needed entering the park off of Central Avenue. And finally, that, and I don't exactly know how to word this, that assurances similar to what is required for subdivision development be required for improvement costs within the park in the form of a bond to the city to ensure that each phase is able to be completed and that the project is not left unfinished for long periods of time.
And a question for either legal or staff. Would a surety bond be able to fulfill that requirement? Instead of having them have to front 120% of the...
We can make it 100% instead of 120.
100%.
What would a surety bond, if they bought a surety bond to guarantee that, would that be sufficient rather than having to, it's kind of like if you have to post bond in a trial. Okay, so I'm saying if we ask them to request them to provide us with a surety bond equal to that amount that's payable to the city, would that be sufficient to meet that requirement?
There's a motion for council. for the commission.
Yes, that is the motion.
That is the motion.
That is the motion.
They could require, that they would have to provide a surety bond. Rather than having to provide it all in cash, they could do it in the form of a bond.
Are you clarifying Chairman Barlow's motion?
I am
Or are you
trying to.
amending his motion?
I'm trying to clarify what he's proposing.
I think so. Is my understanding. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And that passes unanimously.
As with
Ms. Factor-Cutter.
As with all conditional use permits, unless there is a appeal received by the city clerk's office within 7 days, this CUP will become effective.
Thank you, Ms. Factor-Cutter. Thank you, everyone, for your patience this evening. I'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the call to the public. If there's any citizen desiring to speak on a matter within the jurisdiction of the Planning and Zoning Commission that is not on the agenda this evening, you may do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll move on to item number 7, approval of minutes. For the minutes for the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of July 11th, 2023. I will move to approve the minutes with the change that in the locations where it mentions Commissioner Adams, that be replaced with Commissioner Schneff. That was a typo on there.
You know what page that is, Chairman?
It's on page 4 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I make that motion with that change. Do I have a second by Commissioner Whipple. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here.
I have an abstention by Commissioner Wilson. Moving on to item number 8, summary of current events. And we'll start with Commissioner Wilson.
We lost so many of them, but I just want to remind everybody that the Show Low Farmers Market is going on until September 23rd, I believe, this year. So if you haven't been to it, it's great. It's a fun place to go and get some neat stuff.
Neff.
School starts, so traffic, be careful. Next week.
Next week. Nothing from Commissioner Whipple. Commissioner Hatch.
Great day, Sholo.
Commissioner Roberts.
Fire danger. Just need to be aware of fire danger and the traffic that we have. So if we can just watch out for those items.
And nothing to add to that. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Factor-Cutter.
Nothing other than I want to thank the public that came out. Anytime we have anyone call in with concerns, staff understands that it's a matter that people are interested and have concerns with. So we appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And with that, not seeing any other items on the agenda, I will adjourn us.